Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Stan, and I'm back again to talk about some more Magic the Gathering old school killer decks. Now, the deck that I'm going to talk about today is called the Vise Age deck. And this deck is actually the number 7 most dominating old school killer deck. Now, it got the title Vise Age because it used a black Vise and some of the most powerful cards in the Ice Age expansion. Now, this deck tries to deal as much damage as early as possible in the game with those black Vices that I just mentioned, earn them gens, orbs, and a lot of direct damage spells like the Stormbind, for example, which is probably one of my favorite cards from the Ice Age expansion. Oh, and let us not forget the Strip Mines. Now, as you can tell from the recipe, you take a look at the artifact and it has 4 black Vices and 4 Howling Mines. This combination right here spelled doom for your opponent. A first turn Strip Mine and a black Vice was very, very dangerous for your opponent. Now, when this deck really starts to get rolling, those Howling Mines serve to replenish your hand as well as keep your opponent under pressure, using a couple of more black Vices that come into play later on in the game. And it helps by giving you extra fodder that you can throw away so you can feed to the Stormbind. Also, those Tender Walls and those Orcish Lumberjacks give your deck an extra speed element. And just in case extremely rare situations where you would fall behind, you have the Jakku Hops, which served as a reset button. Granted, it doesn't beat a Nevin'Real Disc, but in a deck like this, perhaps maybe you don't need the Nev. One of the major strengths of this deck was its speed. So with that in mind, you guys know that this was a control deck's nightmare. And a lot of people use these kind of decks whenever they showed up at a tournament that was dominated by a lot of control decks. Now, for a several month period back in like summer of 95, when this deck first made its appearance in the tournament scene and dominated the Type 2 scene, a lot of questions popped up in the players' heads whenever they were trying to construct the deck for tournament play. How well does my deck do against a first turn black Vice? Especially for all of you who are playing control decks. Those who couldn't find a good answer to this question were usually the first ones to get their asses kicked in the tournament. Now, because the deck was so dominant back in the day, the black Vice ended up being restricted in Type 2. Now, when this happened, this opened up a whole new realm of possibilities in deck design. So, in a way, getting the black Vice restricted in Type 2 was a good thing, because if this hadn't happened, in my opinion, I don't think the Necro deck would have existed. The only real weaknesses that I see with this deck is probably there could be a possibility that you could deck yourself. You know, considering the fact that you have 4 Howling Mines, what happens if you get all 4 of them bitches in play? If you don't have the Stormbind in play to make good of getting rid of those extra cards in your hand, this could spell trouble for you. And a lot of players out there, especially the ones that know this deck like the back of their hands, know when and when not to play any extra Howling Mine. I mean, for the most part, all you need in play is maybe like a good 2 Howling Mines, and that'll help you beat your opponent within the next 4 or 5 turns. Alright guys, that's all I gotta speak about on this deck. One of my favorite deck designs of all time, the Vise Age deck, number 7 in the most dominating old school killer decks. Alright, I'm Stan, and that's all for now.